So far we've looked at the Ashtaka Varga in the birth chart, and now we're going to start looking at the Ashtaka Varga in the light of transits, so the transiting planets. That's the most common way in which Ashtaka Varga is used, is to see the ups and downs in life as the transiting planets go through the different signs and stimulate the different Ashtaka Varga points. And there's a lot of ways to do this. The first way we're going to do it is a method from Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, where it's basically we're going to deal with time. So time is something that's measured astrologically. And the most sort of simple time fragment there is the solar month. That's the time that the sun is in a particular sign. We call that a Saura Masa, or solar month. It means a month of the sun. And the month of the sun is a tropical month when the sun enters a tropical sign and then leaves it. During that time, it's going to be in the sign, a zodiac sign with a certain amount of points. And based on those points, Brihat Parashara gives a result. So I have those sutras copied here. For instance, there will be danger of death in the Saura month, which has 7 or less than 7 Rekas in the Sarva Ashtaka Varga. So Rekas means basically, the points. You can just translate that as points, okay? So if there's 7 or less, that month might be the month that will kill you, possibly, okay? Then he gives remedies. To ward off this, 20 tolas of gold and 2 heaps of sesame seeds resembling the shape of a mountain should be given in charity. So 2 mountainous heaps of sesame seeds and 20 tolas of gold you need to give in charity to avoid that. So there's always some charitable action or some other thing that you can do for each of these bad months that have low points to help ward that off. I have no experience in trying to use those and to see if they have worked. Some of these might be hard to do. For instance, there will be danger from weapons in the solar month, which contains 10 points, and armor together with the Vajra, which is a lightning bolt, so probably some kind of weapon like a spear, should be given in charity to ward off this evil effect. Will it work? I don't know. Where are you going to get armor, and who are you going to give it to who needs it? That's the problem. So you can experiment with those. I've done nothing with those perpetuations, but I left them there because they're sort of interesting. But the basic idea is most of them are charitable. And so if you want to perpetuate your bad solar month, giving charitable acts of any type can be considered helpful. I don't think you have to be this specific of what you have to give. Of course, 20 tolas of gold and 2 heaps of sesame seeds sounds like a fortune to me for 7 points. And when we get over here to there'll be anxieties all around in the solar month that has 29 points. Ghee, clothes, and gold should be given in charity to obtain relief. All right, so some ghee, some clothes, some gold, sort of whatever you have that's worth giving should be given. But it's not given this excessive amount or anything. So the idea is that if you want to perpetuate a sign with very low points, you're going to have to give a lot in charity. Give something that charitably matters these days. If the sign is not that low in points, just a little low, it won't take as much charity to give it. So the idea is that charitable giving can improve your solar months, the time of which the sun transits through a sign. Now there's a couple ways we can use this idea. So for instance, we could simply say, okay, in this chart, the lowest month is Aries. So when the sun's in Aries every year from about March 20th to April 20th, that's going to be their worst month of the year. Okay? And then their best month of the year is going to be when the sun's in Cancer, or gets 35 points, and that's going to be the best time of their year. And everything else will be somewhat in between that. And you can use that and be accurate to some degree. The sign that the sun is transiting through will be a better month if the points are higher in general. But there's other factors that can impact that, which we're going to talk about too. But first of all, I want to explain a few things. When we think about this, we go, okay, let's take Cancer, for instance. It gets 35 points. Now, the Sun in Cancer gets 5 points. It's good for the Sun in general, and collectively, it's good with 35 points. But let's take another sign that's maybe not so good, like Pisces. Pisces gets 6 points for the Sun, but only 25 points overall, collectively. So the solar month of Pisces isn't going to be that good. And so there's this sort of appearing contradiction that, wait a minute, the Sun in Pisces gets 6 points on the individual Ashtaka Varga that we first studied. So how in the collective can it be bad in Pisces if Pisces, you know, how can that be? What should we give emphasis to? Should we give emphasis to the points, the overall total points, or to the points of the planet? Okay, it depends what you're looking at. And this is a very critical part of Ashtaka Varga. What we're dealing with right now is time. The Sun is like a clock on the clock. It's the monthly clock. And as that clock ticks through each month, it says, this is a good month for these things. This is a good month for these things. This month is not so good for these things and good for other things. So as it ticks through the signs, the Sun is saying, okay, this sign is good for certain things or bad for certain things. And collectively, all those good and bad things add up to make it a better or worse month. Okay, that's what we're doing with time. So in essence, let's take Cancer. Cancer has 35 points. It gets 5 points for the Sun, so it's strong for solar things, power, visiting important, powerful people. Moon gets 6 points. It's a good time for being happy, becoming emotionally free, emotionally healthy, connecting with Mother. Mars has 3 points. It's not the best time for connecting with siblings. Mercury has 6 points. It's a great time for business, friendship, gambling. Jupiter has 4 points. It's an okay time for children and expanding one's financial potentials. Venus has 7 points. It's a great time for love and romance and buying a vehicle, Venetian things. Saturn has 4 points. It's so-so for dealing with the things that you just have to hang in there and deal with, and dealing with your debts and other problems such as diseases. So overall, it gets 35 points, which means it's going to be a good month. But it's going to be a good or bad month in the context of the planets that give signs there. It's not a good or bad month in the context of the Sun. Okay? The Sun here is not the Sun, it's the clock hand. It's the month hand of the big clock, okay? So each sign has within it the seeds, we can say, of doing good or bad to a planet. Cancer is very good for Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. So when the hand of time, the Sun, comes to Cancer, it basically waters all those seeds, and it says it's a good time now for Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus things. And so those are the things that are going to do well during that time in a person's life. Okay? Now when it's in Pisces, it only gets 25 points, the Sun. So that month is going to be good for Sun stuff because it gets 6 points. In fact, that's the best sign for the Sun. So it's going to be good for Sun stuff. And it's even going to be good for Moon stuff, and it's going to be good for Saturn stuff. But it's not going to be good for Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, or Venus stuff. And overall, it's not going to be considered that great of a month. Okay, because, that's not a good time for Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars things. So what we're looking at here, we're seeing the potential of the sign, what that sign indicates, based on the planets it receives from all the points it receives from all the other planets. Then the Sun comes along and ticks off that time period. Tick, tick, tick. Okay? We're not looking at the auspiciousness of the Sun in transit exactly. Okay? To see an individual planet in transit, we have to look more at the individual points, which we will be doing later. So the Sun stuff is going to do best when the Sun's in the points with high signs. Okay? But what we're looking at here is time. Not the Sun as a karaka, not the Sun as a planet, but the Sun as an indicator of time. indicating a month-long time during which good and bad things will happen. If the points are higher that month, collectively higher, then that month is going to be good for a lot of things. That time is stimulating a lot of good things. If the points are low, that time is stimulating a lot of less favorable things. And there's always going to be some high and low points, usually, unless you have an extreme case. But there's almost always going to be one thing that's got less than 3 or less points, and one thing that has 5 or more points, usually. And so those are going to be the things that you do best or worst with that month. But what we're looking at here is the overall influence of time. Okay? So like if this person, if we were going to predict the most likely time for this person to get married, we might say when the sun's in Pisces is a really great time for you to meet someone. Okay? I'm sorry. No, we wouldn't want to say that. I got confused. That would be like career. What we would do, we go to Venus's and say, Venus gets 7 points in Cancer and 6 points in Capricorn. So when the sun's in Cancer and Capricorn, that supports your romantic life. These are the times when I can see you connecting to the best type of people for you, or the people you enjoy the most, the person, the lover, whatever. Because that's when the time of Venus is very high. Okay? Now, when it's in Cancer, almost everything's high. During that month, this person can feel wonderful about almost everything. When it's over here in Capricorn, it's 27 points, a little bit lower than the average 28. So during that month, while they might find their love life working out nicely, and their friendship life working out good, Mercury, and their any investments they're making working out good with Mercury, and any business working out, they might find that their Sun, stuff with their father's maybe not doing well, Saturn's not doing well either, maybe their health themselves is failing, or they're struggling with during that time. So overall, it ends up just being not really a wonderful period. Okay? So we're looking at the hands of time here. And as I mentioned, Parashar gives us these, basic ideas of some things to expect when you get low points. Okay? I have got 19 points in one of my signs, and that's, my lowest sign. So you can test this on your chart and say, okay, is this relevantly true? I got 19 points in one of my signs. And when my sun goes through there, which is going to be March 20th to April 20th of every year about, there has been 2 significant times in my life where I would say something relevant from banishment from the homeland has certainly happened. Okay? Where things directly related to home were in dire straits. Okay? I would almost say 3 times, like seriously bad, that I can remember as being, wow, this really tore up my home somehow, okay? But this happens every year, and only 3 times did it actually, do I remember March 20th to April 20th ruining my sense of home life, okay? Now, why is it not happening every year? Because this is a smaller hand of time. It's not the biggest hand of time. If the sun was the biggest hand of time, then we'd be having these huge ups and downs in our lives, right? Every month we'd have a huge up or a huge down as the points go high or low, and life would be crazy. So look at this as a smaller hand of time. So these results that he gives, realize that if there's things in your chart that are saying your homeland's going to be banished, then yeah, it's very likely it's going to happen when there's 19 points. But even more likely than that, anytime you see something adverse in your chart, it's very likely to happen during a solar month that's adverse. But if you don't have other adverse factors going on in your chart, don't freak out just because your sun is going through a low point sign. In the same way, if you don't have other things indicating an uptime in your life, don't start waiting for that high month, because it's not going to be all that high. So the sun month, the solar month, this 30-day period of the sun going through a sign is a up and down blip on the greater wave of your life. Okay, it's just a month-long influence. So don't get carried away with these results and points. But sometimes you'll see them line up. Like 3 times in my life, there's definitely been an element of banishment from the homeland. 2 times, like I would say, I'd lost my home in a very painful way during this time. And one time, I guess 2 other times, like now I think of it, I had somewhat losing of homes, okay? But 2 times, like drastically. One of those times, the most drastic one, of course, was when my mom told me she was divorcing my father, which was right after my 16th birthday, so the month after my 16th birthday. So at that time, my home life literally fell apart, and I felt I had to go out there and take care of myself, which I proceeded to do, actually, at 16. So, that's a good example of that. But then I've had so many years and years where the sun has gone through my 19 points Aries sign, and I didn't notice anything really happening, in a drastic way like that. But there's probably every year there's some little thing that maybe bothers me, like maybe, my refrigerator dies or something. I'm depressed because, okay, my home life is getting worse because my fridge is broken, and that kind of disturbs the home life. So, it might just be minor little things like that, okay? And actually, one time I actually had a minor incident like that going on, so it can be anything, but don't always expect these really drastic things. Even like, if you've got 7 points in a sign, no, you're not going to die every year, right? You'll die one time. So, don't you think you're going to die every time the sun starts getting ready to go to the 7-point sign. But if other things are going on in your chart that adverse, yeah, you can say, I think it's going to happen in this month where I've only got 7 points. And you don't need to be that specific about the effects. The effects are basically the worst possible thing, death, to the least worst thing, which is anxiety, just stresses, just anxieties, worries. Okay, possibilities, but not really possibilities that happen, okay? And a little less worse than that is losses in different ways. Okay, so you lose a few things here and there. Not that big a deal, it's manageable. So this is more, the results they give aren't going to always be exact. They rarely will be exact to the word of the sutra. The idea is more, there's a range of effects from death when there's 7 or less points, so the most tragic effects, to very mildly tragic effects, very mild disturbances if this month is 29 points, okay? Use it that way, because if you start expecting the specific things to happen, you won't always hit it on the nail. But be aware that there is a possibility that these things will happen. Like, again, banishment from home has happened when it's happened. The 2 biggest times it happened, my son was actually in Aries, okay? With 19 points there. But it's not always like that. So be flexible in using these. And by looking at your chart a little bit and seeing where the sun was at different times, you can quickly get a feel for this. And you really need to do that. Take your chart and study, all right, every year in March 20th to April 20th, is there a theme? Have I seen a theme of good or bad events, depending if it has really high or really low points? And take your signs with the highest and lowest points, okay? Now, if there's 30 points, he says there'll be all-around increase in wealth, happiness in respect of children, and enjoyments in the Samvatsara month and nakshatras of the Rashi, which has more than 30 points. So more than 30 points is going to be all-around increase in basically everything, okay? Then if you have 40 points or higher, which is really hard to do, there'll be increase in wealth, property, children, and good reputation if the Rashi has more than 40 points. Okay. So it's very simple. More than 30 is great. More than 40 is uber great. Better than great. Okay? And then he gives specific results for each thing below 29 and under. So this is the month of the sun. Now, again, like I said, so we could go look at a chart and we can say, okay, the month of Cancer will be your best month every year. And your other good month will be the month of Taurus, and the month of Leo, and the month of Virgo. Those are your best months with 30 or more points. Okay? And if they think really hard about it, they'll be able to relate to that. But it won't be a good enough job. It's too basic, and it's not accurate enough all by itself. It gets more accurate when you start looking at the points and saying, okay, the month of Cancer is really good all around, and particularly good for moon things, Mercury things and Venus things, okay, and Sun things. Then the month of Pisces is pretty bad. It's definitely a more depressing month, but your professional things and your health things and dealing with burdens, great hardship, Saturn, you'll be able to deal with them very effectively, even though other things aren't working out for you during that time. So you can get a little more specific, a little bit more clear, and help prompt the person's memories. But then Parshar goes on and tells us a little more. He says, okay, there will be all-around increase in wealth, happiness, and respect to children and enjoyments in the Samvatsara, month, and nakshatra of the Rashi, which has more than 30 rekas. In fact, I want to replace that word nakshatra. It's really not nakshatra. It's lunar day, actually. It's sort of. It's not even there. The sutra itself says the year, etc. So the year and other time fragments is what it basically says. The translator translated as Samvatsara, month, and lunar day, or nakshatra, but it's not really correct. It's simply saying that the year, etc., during the year and other parts, the sign which has more than 30 points gives good. Okay? So they're basically saying, don't just use the month. Don't just use the clock hand that's 30 days long. Okay? Use the lunar day hand, which is, where's the moon? The moon every day is in a sign. It's in a sign for 2.5 days. While the moon's in the sign, it's going to give you the feel of the day. Okay? If there's high points that the moon's going through, it'll be a better day. If there's low points the moon's going through, it'll be less of a good day within the context of that month. So if it's a bad month and a bad moon, bad sun sign points and low moon points, then yes, it's going to be a particularly bad day. But if it's a high sun points and a low moon points, it won't be particularly that bad because your month is kind of holding you up. All right? So what that means, real simply speaking, new moons. This gives us something else we can do with new moons. New moons are when the sun and moon are in the same sign. So new moons in signs with lots of planet points will be better periods than new moons where the points are low. So for instance, this person, we recently had a new moon in Scorpio. 25 points in Scorpio. Was that an easy new moon for them? No, it wasn't an easy new moon for them. In fact, they had disappointment in their life during the time of that new moon. This month, the new moon will give them 29 points. Okay? It's a bit better. All right? The Cancer new moon will be best in general. So it gives you a way to analyze the new moon a little bit when you see it doing something. New moons usually can be difficult, okay? But if the points are higher, expect it to be better, less difficult. Because then you got two hands of the clock sitting at the same thing, stimulating the same thing, right? So new moon time, 1 or 2 days around new moon, this moon will be in that same sign as the sun. And then you've got, a lot of things happening at that time, okay? But also, the astrological clock is not exactly the same as the clock on the wall. On the clock on the wall, when the large hand and the small hand come to the same place, that's when an hour has passed, right? So the hour hand and the minute hand come to the same numeral, an hour has passed, and a thing has shifted, okay? With this clock, it's actually the full moon that's more important. So see where the sun is, and then see where the new moon is. Because the new moon is the bigger giver in transits, right? He's really illuminating that sign. So look at the sign of the new moon to see how many points, the full moon, see how many points of good the full moon will give, and compare that to the points of the sun. All right? If the sun's giving 25 points and the full moon gives 40 points, that means it gives a large chunk of what the sun's potential is, meaning it'll be the best time within that month, but it can't be great still because the month itself is low. So always keep the bigger clock hand in mind, okay? And in astrology, the clock hands are most powerful when they're in opposition, meaning when the sun and moon are opposite, when it's full moon. The clock hands are more focused in bringing something about than during new moon. Though during new moon, it's a bigger time of losses. So if the points are low, those new moons will have much bigger losses when the sun and moon conjunct, when you get those new moons, okay? If the points are high, the full moons are going to be the biggest. When you get a sun going through a sign with a lot of points and the full moon going through a sign with a lot of points, okay? That's not always going to be possible simply because of the arrangement. For that to happen, you need some decent points on both ends. Like this chart, we've got 32 in Virgo, but only 25 in Pisces. So any sun going through Virgo, the full moon, is only going to be so good. But if you find charts where opposing signs have a lot of points, the full moons going through those signs will usually be pretty nice full moons for them, okay? And the new moons of a sign with really low points will tend to be really difficult. So this person, when the sun goes through Aries with 23 points and then the new moon also goes through Aries, will usually be one of the worst times in their year, all other factors equal, which they never are, okay? And a person who's got two signs in opposition with high points, the full moons of those will be usually the best times of the year, the best 2 or 3 day periods of their year every year, okay? So that's some ways you can use those. So the moon is the smaller clock hand. If it's 30 or more points, it's going to be really good days. If it's 40 or more, the moon's going to really favor you. If it's 25 or less, they're going to be more depressing, less happy days. Okay? So that's the moon. But he also says the samvatsara, or the vara, etc., the year. There's one other planet that has to do with time, and that's Jupiter. Jupiter is actually a clock hand in time. So the year is Jupiter, the month is the sun, and the day is the moon's position. Okay? So the reason I think that Jupiter is chosen as a time factor, because interesting enough, Saturn's not. The transit of Saturn is the transit of Saturn. It's not a hand on the clock of time. The hand of the clock of time is Jupiter, Sun, and Moon. Okay? So Jupiter, I think, gets the honor of being a clock hand in time because Jupiter actually moves the sun around in space. So we don't actually revolve around the sun. Our solar system doesn't revolve around the sun exactly. Our solar system revolves around a point that the sun revolves around called the barycenter. So the sun is actually revolving around a small point a point in space called the barycenter, and it's a little less than 12 years for the sun to go around the barycenter. And the sun goes around the barycenter because of the gravitational pull of Jupiter. Because Jupiter is such a massive planet, it actually exerts some gravitational pull on the sun that causes the sun to go around a little circle. So the transit of Jupiter, as it's pulling on the sun, because the sun is the primary time factor, affects time because it affects what the sun is revolving around in this slightly less than 12-year cycle. So all time really has to do with the sun. You know, the lunar days have to do with how far the moon is from the sun. The every 12 degrees is a lunar day. Then the solar months have to do with the motion of the sun from the equinoxes and solstices. And then the year of Jupiter has to also do with the movement of the sun based on how Jupiter's gravitational influence is pulling the sun around a small circle. Okay? So, we also want to watch the transits of Jupiter. And that gives us a much bigger clock hand. So with that we can say, well, when the Jupiter transits Cancer, that's going to be your best year every 11.86 years. That's how long it takes Jupiter to go through. So about every 12 years, Jupiter will go through Cancer. That's going to be a nice time for this person. Okay? What is it going to be nice for? Well, Jupiter through Cancer will be nice for professional things. It'll be nice for moon things. Moon things have a lot to do with just finding peace with oneself, feeling connected to the world, feeling connected to life and other people, feeling right about where they are in life. It'll be good for Mercury things, education, things like that, depending on the age a person's in. So a person going to school, Mercury months, when Mercury gets lit up, are going to be really important to them. It's going to be good for romantic pursuits that year, with Venus getting 7 points. And in fact, when Jupiter was in Cancer, that was actually the year that this person had like the most intense, passionate romance of their life. Okay? It didn't last. It didn't lead to marriage. Why? Because at the time they were running, if I remember correctly, one of those really tough dashas for relationships, and you're like Venus Rahu. So the dasha was adverse. Okay, so it didn't stick. It wasn't the time for them to actually get married. But it was still a time where Jupiter was giving them a very Venetian experience in their life, the strongest Venetian experience in their life, in fact. Okay, so don't expect Ashtaka Varga just because Jupiter's going to go through a sign with 7 points in Venus that that's going to be the year you're going to meet the person you marry. You might not. This person met the person they were going to get married when Jupiter was going through 5 points. Got 5 points is when they got married. Still pretty good. It's still a pretty good Venus. But it's not as good as the 7. And that will tell you something about their Venetian experience with their marriage. Okay? So we have to sort of, again, keep in mind that Ashtaka Varga is not the only thing that's happening. But we can work with it if we don't make ultimatums on this simple technique. Okay? So you can say, yes, when Jupiter goes through Cancer, it'll be a wonderful time in general for you. It will also be a time when Venetian things in particular will be wonderful for you. And it will be a time when, and actually one of the interesting things during this time the person started working for General Motors, which of course makes automobiles, a Venetian corporation. So they also started working for General Motors during that time. So, Venus was really giving it to them during that year, and they were on the top of the world. They got their first big job out of college. They were, having this amazingly, relationship, and they got hired by a big corporation with automobiles. Okay, so you can see it would have been a nice time for them. But don't just say, oh, it's going to be marriage, because it won't always be marriage. The dasha will have a lot to say. If it's, that's like, what are you really ready for? Are you really going to go for the marriage? Are you really going to let it happen or not? And for this person, it didn't work out that way due to other factors in their dashas. So we have 3 hands of time. The year hand of Jupiter, okay? The month hand of the sun, and the day hand of the moon. So a good thing to do is to go to your transits, go to your transit hit list, click on Jupiter and transiting, click on Rashi here, and then say click, a year here into a year, go from amount of years. We want to ingress into Rashis. This will let us see when the Jupiter goes into a sign, transits into a sign. Then we can calculate that and say, okay, let's see your Cancer times. 1989 was a Cancer time. Okay? This means this might have possibly been a good time for them relationship-wise. Well, as it turned out, this was a time after their divorce where they started getting active in meeting women once again. And Jupiter went into Cancer. Remember that 7 points for Venus under Cancer. So they were finally getting their feet back under them and feeling like they could start getting forward with their life. So that Jupiter really of 5 points really picked them up. Okay? So at some point Jupiter went into Pisces. The last time it went into Pisces was 2010. Well, during 2010, due to some legal problems, they had a falling out with their sun. See, Jupiter is children. Jupiter gets 2 points in Pisces. So at that point, they had a problem with their sun, and they didn't talk to their sun. We were very upset at them that's right, until Jupiter went over to Taurus, where Jupiter gets 30 points, and Jupiter gets 7 points himself. So it's the time to reconcile with the sun. So at that point, when Jupiter went into Taurus, which we can see as being 2011, things started balancing out with the sun once again. Okay? So one of the nice things about this technique, it's a quick way we can kind of see ups and downs. So if a person comes in and says, I had problems with my sun in 2010, and you look and say, well, in 2010, Jupiter was in Pisces. Okay, I can see that. Then you can just say, well, in 2011, when Jupiter goes in Taurus, and 2013, when Jupiter's in Gemini, you get 7 points with your sun, and I think things will start working out then. This is where the time is there for things to work with the sun. And so they will improve. How much are they going to improve? Are you going to say they're going to be perfect because it's such high points? No, they might not. Don't say that. They might not have a perfect dasha. But you can certainly say they're going to improve when Jupiter goes here. Now when the sun, so that's how you can use Jupiter in any area of life. It's just you're only limited by your Karaka-ship. If a person's dealing with health problems, Jupiter in Scorpio would be problematical for this person's health, right? Scorpio gets 25 points, but Saturn gets 0. So the year of Jupiter in Scorpio could be problematical for this person's health. As it turns out, Jupiter went into Scorpio. Okay? So this is showing, geez, you're going into a tough time for your health. You might have some disease things that you're not able to deal with at all until Jupiter goes into Sagittarius. But even then, there's not enough to really succeed with it. There's not a lot of Jupiter to really boost Saturn until Jupiter goes into Pisces once again. So this year is likely going to be a year of, health difficulties for this person. Okay, the beginning of some long-term health problems because they don't have a big boost to Saturn for a while. Okay, and of course 25 points is not great. Last year they had 25 points too, so it wasn't the most fantastic year. That was when Jupiter was in Libra. Now this is the transits over here. Jupiter's gone into Scorpio. The points are still not great. So still, it's not the time for them to have the best time right now. When Jupiter goes into Sag, it'll be better. Okay, so that's another year away because, Jupiter just recently went into transit. I was really lucky that I went from like 22 points in Libra to much more points in Scorpio. And the transit of Jupiter for me was like wonderful. It really, it was really nice to get Jupiter back in my court. Okay, so simple technique, but it's useful to see the general good and bad times simply by when Jupiter and the Sun are going through a sign. But also, it's really great. It's even more great if you break it down to say what's good or bad based on the planets that are giving points to those signs. So to continue with the prediction, we can say, well, Saturn, Jupiter, it's a bad year for you in general because you only got 25 points for Jupiter. It's not going to be the happiest year, especially for Saturn stuff. Okay? So, what month might we want to predict the worst things to happen? Well, where else is there low months? Well, obviously when the Sun comes to Scorpio. Okay? So, the Sun just finished Scorpio. That's one possibility. The other possibility is the months that the Sun is low, which could be Gemini and Capricorn. Okay? So the month of Gemini, May 20th to June 20th, and then Capricorn, which is basically Christmas month, December 20th through January 20th, could also be tough times. So my guess is that with 0 points here, something has probably happened. Because what happens when Sun and Jupiter come together every year, that's when Jupiter's the least auspicious, because he's going to be combust at that time, right? So when the Sun and Jupiter are in the same sign, Jupiter's least auspicious. When the Sun's opposite Jupiter's sign, that's when Jupiter's most auspicious. So the transit of Jupiter is always best when he's retrograde and opposite the Sun. The same way that the transit of the Moon is always best when he's full. Okay? Like I said, in the astrology clock, it's when things are opposite the Sun that the time is best. Okay? So, I'm sort of going to have to check up on this person and surprised I haven't heard from them, because they usually contact me when they have health problems, but maybe they're struggling to try to manage it on their own, and so they haven't burdened me with whatever problem came up. But I think it's quite likely something came up for them, you know, during this last month. So I'll have to check that, and I'll let you guys know in the next video. Now we narrow down the year, and then also we can nail down the month. And we can also say, okay, can we narrow down the day? Well, yes, when the moon was at this low point, that might be a time, or the moon is in Capricorn or Pisces. So we can do a moon check, say, when last month was the moon in Scorpio? Okay. Last month the moon was in Scorpio 5 days ago about. Why 5 days ago? Because the sun and moon would have been conjunct new moon 5 days ago. I can tell that because it's just a guess. This moon takes 2.5 days to go through a sign. So it's about 4 days actually, because it's 2.5 days through Sag and it's halfway through Capricorn, so that's 1.25 day, about 1.5 days. So 4 days ago, the sun, moon, and Jupiter were all at 0 points. So perhaps that's why I haven't heard from them yet, because whatever might have disturbed their health, they haven't had time to contact me yet. So I will certainly find out, because this is his worst sign. And this person's old. As a result of that, Jupiter going through Scorpio or Libra didn't save them completely, because they're at the age where health problems really build up. You know, we're talking 80s or something like that. So I know that with last year having some health problems with 25 points and you know, 4 points was the Saturn. I'm not bad of a Saturn, but they still managed to have some problems, some acute things. You can see Mars is at 3 points. That was 0 points coming on. It definitely has me much more concerned than did last year. Okay. All right, so that gives you some examples. So we can calculate this thing and say, okay, what are some possibly tougher times for this person? Pisces, 25 points. Hate it, right? Venus, lowest sign in Pisces, 2 points. But good in their career, 6 points. Well, when Jupiter was in Pisces at the age of 50 for this person, 2 things happened. Their career got much better, 6 points for Sun's points in Pisces, and their wife filed for divorce, 2 points. So during that year, their wife filed for divorce. And when did their wife file for divorce? Well, what would be the most likely time for him to hear of this bad news? When the sun was in Pisces, perhaps? Everything else has really good points. Okay? I don't know when this person heard about their divorce exactly. I know when the divorce was finalized, and I have that in my record, but I never thought to ask when he actually realized, when he actually, the actual month. I actually don't have that. But I would guess it would be in the month of Pisces, because it's the only Venus low point. So then Jupiter and Sun are both there. But it did happen in that year. So we can try the hand clock of the Sun too. Again, this is a very simple timing technique. We're not using dashas or anything. But sometimes it'll work. And working it down to a year based on Jupiter is going to be easier, more accurate than you working it down to a month. Okay? So the year, it was a tough year for them. How about other times Jupiter was in Pisces? 1998. Okay? Did this person have anything going on relationship-wise? Okay? No, they didn't. Okay? Nothing ended at that time because nothing had been going on at that time. But had it, Jupiter certainly wouldn't have favored it. But the time that they were in a marriage, in a relationship, when Jupiter went into Pisces, it fell apart. Okay? Before that, okay, I had to recalculate the year, I couldn't remember it, but before that, when Jupiter was in Pisces, a time previous to that, this person had 2 points, again, for Venus. So there's going to be some problems with their wife. They didn't divorce their wife during that time, but there's a lot of problems because their wife had a kid that neither of them really was prepared for or wanted. So we also saw Jupiter with 2 points. So these two things happened, but they were unhappy times for them. Okay, so the wife was unhappy. Child was unhappy with just 2 points. So you'll see, yeah, sometimes when if a Jupiter is going through a sign where there's low points in Jupiter's Ashtaka Varga, during that time that when people have kids because the dasha made them do it, they're probably not going to be wanting to have kids. And so that can be disappointing, okay? Previous to that, they had a child when Jupiter was with 5 points. That was their firstborn daughter, and they were quite happy with that. They doted on that child. They were very, very happy to have that daughter. But over the years, things changed and things shifted, and they weren't so happy at the time that this happened, okay? The time that they had another baby, a few years down the road. So we consistently see this Pisces sign causes some disturbance when Jupiter goes through it, because low points and low points on Venus, so disturbances in relationship things. And if you look at the chart, you can tell that with Venus being debilitated and also far away from the 4th house, that's going to cause a person to have some problems in their Venetian areas of life. Okay? And ironically, that year when Jupiter was in Pisces was a great year for their career. Pisces is funny that way. It's good for their career, but sad on almost everything else. And so it ends up being not that happy of a time, but still good for their career. When the divorce happened in Cancer, or not Cancer, sorry, in Pisces down the road, when this person was like 50 or something, that also, we see loss of kids. So the wife ended up with custody of all the kids. So we see 2 points in Pisces, 2 points in wife. It's a very unfavorable transit for wife and kids for this person. Okay, and again, then there's the other time it was in Pisces that I mentioned. I believe it was in Pisces. Yes, when they had problems with their son, and didn't talk to them for a couple years until Jupiter finally kicked into Taurus again. Okay, so we had Pisces with 2 points, Aries with 3 points under Jupiter, and inauspicious times. And overall, the Jupiter in Aries was even more frustrating because it only had 3 points, where nothing really was working in their life, because everything is, mediocre or low points. Okay, so I hope that's a good introduction to this really simple technique. Look, use it to judge your days, your month, your years, whatever you want. But always judge your day in the context of the month and your month in the context of the year of Jupiter, where Jupiter's transiting. And if you wanted to, you can make a little calendar for yourself. You can click Jupiter, Sun, and Moon, ingress the signs. And I wouldn't do this for, say, more than, for no more than a year for a time, but let's just do it for a month at the time so it won't take too long. So we'll calculate this from January 1st, 2017 to February 1st, 2017. Sun, Moon, and Jupiter ingress the Rashis. And you can hit screen, and you can have a little Ashtaka Varga calendar for yourself. It doesn't have Jupiter on it all, because Jupiter takes a year to go through a sign. So that means Jupiter would have been in Sagittarius the entire time, 25 points. And then we can see the Sun went into Aquarius on January 19th, and Aquarius gives 28 points, and before that was in Capricorn. So things are going to get a bit better when the Sun goes into Aquarius on, January 19th. And then from them we can look at the Moon and say, and the best time within the rest of that month is going to be when the Moon gets the higher points, which, from Scorpio to Aries is going to be Sagittarius. So this day would have been the nicer day. So create a little calendar, maybe print out a year to yourself and just watch it for a while and see if you can feel the moon changing signs and how much points you gain or lose in Ashtaka Varga if you notice you're having some ups and downs. And the same with the month and then the year. Okay? And it's just such a simple technique, but you need to get the feel for it, which means, you know, just start watching it in your own life or the life of people you're close to and get the feel for it. I don't do a whole lot of like professional predictions just with this technique. This is the technique I usually will just play out, like when I'm kicking around bored and wondering how I'm going to feel tomorrow. I'll just go, well, let's see what my moon's doing tomorrow. Or let's see if my sun's changing signs. Or when is my Jupiter getting into a better year? I do it in a very casual fashion with myself. And I do it with people lots of times when people have really quick questions they ask me, things that I forget as soon as I answer. So they'll just say, yeah, I've had a really rough year. When's I going to have a better year? I'll go, let me see when Jupiter goes into a better sign. And that's all I'm going to talk to them about. I'm just going to do it really simple. And I don't usually remember those quickies like that. They're super quickies. But it works. It works in the context of what it does. You can say, yes, you're going to have a better time with these things in your life. And, you know, same sign with these things and a worse time with this thing in 4 years. Or whenever Jupiter goes into a sign with more points. But you'll notice it. Like I mentioned, I went from very low points, I believe 22 points in Libra, to much more points in Scorpio. And already, you know, things feel lighter. You know, a lot of things have been happening since Jupiter went into Scorpio, you know, really, really productive things. So I definitely could feel the Jupiter change. And so with looking at your chart, you should get a good feel for this on your own lives. And that will give you the basis to understand when you want to use this on other people's lives. Okay, so I don't want to spend all this time showing tons of examples that look great on paper. I want you to look at, you know, your life and see how this technique, how well it's worked, get the feel for the technique so that you have the right feel to know when you should use it on other people. And so that you can hopefully make some cool snapshot predictions about your future too. So if you're having a bad month, look at where your moon is. When's the least worst day of my month going to be? See where the moon is going to be in high points and say, okay, my sun's with 19 points now, but my moon will be with 35 points in 3 days. Okay, I'm going to see if I really feel better during that time. See what happens. Or if you're in a really high month with the sun, say, okay, when is this month going to, you know, peak out? See where the moon's going to be at the highest point. Say, when's my best days within this month? And try to predict that and see how it comes about. So very simple technique. Now this technique leads on to some other techniques of timing, like Muhurta techniques, deciding when to do something. And we'll be covering those in the next video, I think. Okay, thank you.